Welcome to the Business of Story, where we connect you with the leading minds in the art of business storytelling. Learn from best-selling authors, Hollywood screenwriters, makers, content marketers, and brand raconteurs on how to craft and sell compelling stories that sell. The Business of Story is brought to you by Oracle Marketing Cloud, helping businesses use the latest marketing technologies to tell their stories and connect with their customers. Emma, which provides innovative email marketing tools and services that drive brilliant results. And by Convince and Convert, digital marketing advisors and counselors to leading brands and organizations worldwide. Convince and Convert helps you gain and keep your customers online. Here's your host, Park Howell.
Hey, welcome back to Business of Story. I'm Park Howell, and I got to tell you, it is literally my honor to be able to connect you with some of these people on the show because you know what? I'm meeting them in some cases for the first time myself. When I started going down this path of studying business storytelling, what did Hollywood know about story? What did neuroscience know about how our brains are wired for story? How does that all come together so we in the business world can do a better job of using story in a pragmatic and intentional way to connect with people? As I've followed this path into the woods, as Joseph Campbell would say, I have been introduced to some of the most amazing people. And today is no different. We have a lady on, Geeta Nadkarni, who is just a ball of fire. I met her through John Lim out of Washington, D.C., who I met through like 9 other different referrals and references, and they were both kind enough to have me on their podcast, and Geeta had me just last week on her podcast at Baby Got Booked. Geeta is a specialist at getting people, helping people really understand and straighten out their story, their powerful story in business, and then through her online platform, helping them get booked, handle their own PR, if you will, to get booked, to get their messages and their stories spread throughout the media, both online, print, broadcast, wherever. It's truly DIY PR. At Baby Got Booked. And when we went and did the session with her, I was the guest, but I quickly turned around to become the host in some cases because Geeta was such a ball of fire. She was so excited about the 10-step story cycle process in her show that she wanted to demonstrate to her listeners how to use it. So she used it on her life, leading up, growing up in India, coming out to North America, being a very sought-after journalist, leaving that, having her first child, trying to figure out then what do I do next in my life? And then very quickly creating a 6-figure company, Baby Got Booked, I think in just over a year's time, maybe it's more like 6 months. She'll tell us more about that today. Anyways, had so much fun on her show, invited her here because I know you will love her. And what we are going to do is now move into the next process of the story cycle with her and apply the story cycle to her business, Baby Got Booked and Baby Got Booked Labs. And you will see how she has been able to create and live into this really amazing story in her own life, both professionally and personally, and how that story aligns now with her business. And because of that alignment, the amazing success she has had helping other people, just like you and I, people professional services firms or business to consumer product firms, align our stories so that we have greater impact not only in our lives, but in the lives of our customers. So glad to have Geeta here today. 3 main things that we're going to be looking at. We are going to talk about how Baby Got Booked is disrupting the PR industry, essentially showing us business owners how we can turn away from PR agencies and giving us agency to handle our own PR in a very simple way that all starts first by getting that compelling story together, getting it straight, and then sharing it in ways that really piques the interest of the producers and the writers out there, and getting us short wins, quick wins very, very quickly. We're also going to talk about the immense importance of having passion, momentum, and innovation in our stories so that they entertain, they educate, and they inform. And if you're thinking right now you don't have that in your story, well, I think by the end of this episode, you definitely will see where you can ignite that within your stories. And finally, Geeta's going to give us some very great words of wisdom about giving yourself permission to rewrite your story and live into a bigger life, and how she does that in her encouragement, in her own ways, and how she does it through her own product offering. So without further ado, let's jump into the story of Geeta Nadkarni and the story cycle. Hi, Geeta. Welcome to Business of Story. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me, Park.
You know, you were so much fun on your show that aired, I believe, just last week. And you invited me on, a very gracious guest. And we went through the entire story cycle with your life, which is pretty amazing life to where you are today. I mean, we had so much fun. And I got to tell you, I have told many people since then, I think you may be the top storyteller yet I've had on this show. Your metaphors, how you talked about your first child that came out like this hot ember of energy. I mean, it was awesome. I had a blast on your show.
Oh, thank you. That's so fun. I had a great time. So you basically coached me through the different pieces of my backstory that led up to where I'm at right now. And it's a very elegant process that you have. So it's really fun to work with.
Well, thank you. Well, let's do that. What we promised your listeners from your show is that since you took us through the story cycle of your personal life to where you are today with this amazing organization and Baby Got Booked and some of the new things you're doing with Baby Got Booked Labs, let's now apply that same principle, that story cycle process to your business, because it's all about first understanding your own leadership story, which may be a founder story, an origin story, which we covered on your show at Baby Got Booked. Now let's take it to that next step and apply it to the business and see if we can't align those two stories. That's what we ultimately want to do. Those, leaders like you want to align your story with your brand story so that it is being expressed to the world in all of its authenticity and fun and, all your ups and downs and everything else. So that's what we're going to tackle today, if that works for you.
That sounds awesome. I'm in.
All right. So we're going to start step one of the story cycle, which is your backstory. So why don't we get our listeners up to speed very quickly from what we covered on your show, about your backstory and how it led to where you are today with Baby Got Booked.
So we're talking about my business backstory,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So I'm super clear. Okay.
Exactly.
So the backstory to that was I was coming off of maternity leave. And as we very, very slowly and gradually integrated our 2-year-old son into daycare, I was looking for the only thing that I could think of to do because I needed to have flex time. I didn't want to work more than 20 hours a week at the time because I wanted to be present for my son. So I was like, okay, let me do some consulting work. And what do I know how to do? I know how to do story. So I was looking for a way to parlay my skill set into a sort of consulting model. And I ended up having a conversation with somebody who worked for one of Canada's biggest nonprofits, and they were looking for somebody to help them with their social media storytelling. So they were looking for someone to do ghost blogging and then come up with an overall strategy for how to get their story out for various projects that they had in-house, how to get those various stories out to the market and get people to sort of buy in and play and so on. So that's what I did. Now, it was a fabulous job. I got to work with lots of different people, but as many consultants will be smiling wryly at this point, I imagine, those 20 hours ballooned pretty quickly. And I think more dissatisfying than that was the fact that despite the fact that I thought I did a really good job with storytelling, I mean, after all, I had more than 22 years of journalism experience behind me. The stories were great. I had amazing feedback from everybody involved with the blog posts that we came up with, the hooks that we came up with, and all that good stuff. What we just weren't able to do in the immediate term was build the audience. And that's when a big aha occurred for me, which was that with social media, I mean, everybody talks about, there's, a bajillion million people on Facebook and there's like 18 gajillion other people on Twitter and so on and so forth. And they're an audience just waiting for your message. Yes and no. there are tactics and very specific skill sets involved in acquiring those numbers and building them into an actual audience. It's kind of like saying, well, there's 7 billion people on earth. That's your market. And that's not true, right? Yes, potentially, perhaps, but not really, really. You don't have 7 billion people's credit card number. So that's where I was like, oh, I'm really good at the story part, but I'm not so great at the audience acquisition and nurturing part. And P.S., those are two separate full-time jobs.
Right.
And I'm trying to work less than one.
So this led into Baby Got Booked, which is what, kind of a DIY PR approach platform?
Exactly. So what I looked to do was I was like, okay, I'm done with this whole stupid dollars for hours thing. I'm done. I want to build something that is scalable. And by scalable, I mean something where I am able to increase my revenue stream and the number of people that I serve without necessarily working more hours. So you don't pay me an hourly rate. I want to build something where whether 5 people play in it or 500 people play in it, it costs me more or less the same amount to run. So I immediately thought of an online course. And at this point, I became an absolute sponge for these various ads that would pop up in my feed on Facebook, and I would subscribe to people's lists. And I was like, let me see. I'm a huge believer in not reinventing the wheel. I'm like, if somebody else can make this work, I'm just going to learn by osmosis, by absorbing their content, exactly what they're doing, connect the dots behind the scenes, and do my own version of it.
So you built that, and it's been really quite successful over the course of the last 2 years or so.
Not even. It's a year and a half as of this recording. We're 18 months in.
So you essentially help people primarily in the business-to-business world, professional services firms, understand how to get booked. Baby Got Booked, booked in media, TV shows, how to get their stories out to the world.
Right. So just to clarify, it's B2B as well as business to consumer, because what I basically help people do, which is somewhat similar, but ever so slightly different from what you do, is I help people take their story and put it in front, package it in such a way that journalists run after them. And that gets them in front of an audience. Now, you basically get to tell your story to an audience without having to build the audience. So whether that means getting in front of a huge captive audience that some blogger has put in the time and resources to build, or getting on a podcast, getting in front of a TV show, getting your own column on Inc.com, whatever that looks like to you, I teach people how to get crystal clear about who their target audience is, go find where that audience has already been built, is already being nurtured, and then package their message in such a way that the gatekeepers there let them in.
Okay, excellent. Let's move into chapter 2 of the story cycle. And this is called Who's Your Hero? And this is the spoiler alert. The brand is not the hero, but the customer is. So
yes.
Describe your top hero, your number one customer.
So my number one customer was, and this was really, really early on. It's funny. I didn't even intend for her to become a customer. It just kind of happened. She was somebody whose content I had purchased. So she has multiple online offerings. Her name is Sarah, and she lives in Illinois. She's she has various businesses and is very successful at all of them. She has one of the most successful boutique photography studios in the US, top 15. She has a multi-million-dollar company called The Joy of Marketing. She's a marketing expert, and she's a very, very highly paid and sought-after speaker on the subject of marketing. So that's 3 businesses that I know of. And we had consumed a lot of her Joy of Marketing content because my husband was at the time trying to launch a photography business, a wedding photography business. And she did a lot of how to market your photography business type stuff. And I loved it. And I loved her platform. I loved her graphic design. I loved all of it. And I thought, hey, if I'm going to launch Baby Got Booked, maybe I should partner with her to get in front of, basically I'm practicing what I'm preaching. She has a captive audience of 70,000 photographers. That's my market. I would love to help them get in front of the media. So I reached out to her. And then that conversation, which I thought was me pitching a partnership, ended up with her sort of telling me how she had worked with all these high-end PR companies and had dropped tens of thousands of dollars when her book came out, which was a New York Times bestselling book. And she wasn't able to get on national television. And I thought, wait, you're a 6 foot tall blonde who is a professional speaker and you have a New York Times bestselling book and you can't get on national TV? What? I was like, look, Sarah, maybe you need to take my course and I'm willing to work with you until you get booked. But if I can't get you on national television in the US, I will hang up my laptop and get a real job, which, by the way, nothing terrifies me more. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did. 3 weeks later, she got picked up by The Guardian in the UK. So she actually started with international press. And then within, I believe it was 5 weeks, may have been 6, she was picked up by Fox News and she was splashed. And that got syndicated. So she was literally all over the country. Of course.
So she is like your top audience, to your hero that really helped you define your market. How does she reflect in general what your overall customer persona is? Because that's what we do in this step of Who's Your Hero. That overall customer persona that comes to Baby Got Booked to get help.
So typically people who come to me are people who have this kind of gut feeling that they know they have an amazing, compelling story. They know they have something that the world needs and wants and is willing to pay for. But there is a minor disconnect between the way they're telling their story and the way their audience wants to hear it. Mm-hmm. So that's the gap that my course helps to bridge. And the reason that Sarah exemplifies that is because she's already successful. A lot of she's one avatar. I have other people who are just starting up their businesses and actually build their business around the story that we create together, because I find that that's a really effective way of building a successful business. If you don't have a great story to tell, sometimes it's easier to build the business around the story, because then right away, when you are a better story, it's easier to tell a better story. So that's the other avatar. But you're coming back to Sarah. I think what was really cool about her experience was that she was like, I know this can be done because I see people who are a lot less smart than me, who have less good content than me, who just, they're not as far along the process as I am. And they're getting press and they're getting all these accolades and they're landing all these posh speaking gigs and they're getting all the benefits of the credibility and exposure and so on. I want that. I've tried paying for it and it's not working. And so the way that I helped was, first of all, to help her just crystallize the message in a way that was sexy to the media, which was not hard to do. And then the other thing is, I don't do people's PR, you see. I'm not a PR agency and never will be, because I truly believe that if you aren't in charge of, there are things in your story that make you compelling, and those things shift on a week-to-week basis. Unless you are literally my only client, which would never happen with a PR agency, and unless you have, more money than God, I am not able to keep up with those nuances. A client will walk into your office and say something to you and you're like, oh my God, this is the start of a trend. I see it. I've just connected some dots with other things that have happened over the course of the last few weeks. And I see this shining story. And then you'll turn on the television. Some celebrity will have gotten divorced or said something silly in the news or done something that immediately is congruent. And right there and there, you can use a template that my team and I have created to send an email in less than 10 minutes and land national television. That's what I can do.
That's pretty powerful. So that moves into chapter 3. What's at stake? So we've set up the backstory. We understand who the hero is in this journey. In this case, we're talking about Sarah, but she's going to be reflective of a number of different audiences for you. What's at stake for them? And I think you already kind of covered this. It's getting their story straight and finding the nuances within the story that are very timely and relevant, that is going to get the attention. But ultimately, for their businesses, what is at stake working with you?
So what's at stake for a small business is very simple. There are a few giants out there. We're talking about the Amazons of the world, the Walmarts, the people with the deepest, who have such huge audience reach and such deep pockets that you cannot compete on price. So I think that the biggest bane of a small business owner's existence is to have to compete on price. And what I think is the sort of the cure-all for that, if you will, is the panacea for that, is to learn to tell a compelling story. I just read a quote from Richard Marcus of Neiman Marcus, and he says, "You always sell better when you tell a good story." So if you don't know how to tell an amazing story, and I know you're with me on this, Park, then you're forced to be one of many. And then the one of many, you only get chosen if you're the cheapest. That's a really quick ride to the bottom. So I think that instead, it's funny because people come to me wanting press. And they're like, okay, yes, I want to get booked in the media. I want my own column in Huffington Post. And they get all of those things. But typically what tends to happen with a lot of my clients is that they'll start doing the exercises that I get them to do. And they'll start making money before they even get the exposure and the credibility that they're after. And that's simply because when they open their mouth at a cocktail party, when somebody walks into their office and asks them how they can help, they're telling a different story. They're telling a better, more compelling story.
So you're absolutely right. We are all commodities. I mean, even though we like to think of ourselves as special little stars in the universe, we're literally all commodities. And it is the stories that we tell that help level us up out of that commodity thinking in the minds of our customers by attaching true meaning to the heart and the emotion of the purchase, which, going right up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, moves us out of the basal needs up into enlightenment in the minds of our customers. And story does that for us. So moving into chapter 4, the call to adventure. Now, Sarah was doing all this stuff, as you described her as a tall, statuesque blonde, very, very talented, had all of these different businesses going, but was not getting booked. So what changed in her life? What was that disruptive force where you showed up that made your offering more relevant than ever?
I think what it really was my utter faith, my confidence that people just needed to know her story. And part of that really, it came from two places. One, I had 22 years behind me, more than that at the time, 24 years behind me of packaging up other people's stories and putting them in front of an audience. I've done TV, radio, print, and web. So I've told stories in every medium conceivable. And I'm good at taking, having people talk to me and sort of listen as the words sort of flow past me. I can pick up the key phrases and I'm like, boom, put these things together. That's your story. That's your package. That's what is going to have somebody in the audience sit up and have the hackles stand up on the back of their neck and think, oh my God, she's talking directly to me. I'm good at that. So I had confidence in that ability. And the other piece was you forget I had consumed Sarah's content. I knew she was the real deal. I had read her book. I was like, I know you're freaking amazing at what you do. You're not some internet marketer, scumbag, sleazy, where it's all smoke and mirrors. I've used your content and it has worked for us. So I kind of really believed in her. I believed in both her and myself.
And your disruptive force in the market, your call to adventure is that you're disrupting PR agencies in a lot of respect, where people that can't maybe afford them or afford their attention full time, you're saying, don't worry about it. Let me let you peek behind the scenes, show you how you can do this yourself, your DIY PR.
Yes, exactly. And and there's two other pieces to it also. And this is actually this story of disruption of why no small business should ever hire a PR agency, which is actually the title of a piece that landed me in my own column in Entrepreneur Magazine, is one, a lot of the tactics that PR agencies use are outmoded. This is stuff that hasn't worked in 10 years. Really. Yeah. I mean, and I know this because I have received hundreds of them per day and deleted them mercilessly without reading them because they're so boilerplate and so vague, and they answer the question, why is this, why now? They answer that question all wrong. They think the answer is, oh, we have a new product. Oh, we have a new launch. We have a new CEO. We are doing this. We're doing that. That's not the correct answer to the question, why now? The correct answer to the question, why now, is why does my audience care about this right now? Is it timely? Is it seasonal? Is it newsworthy? Is something like this happening in the world and your story helps my audience make more sense of it? All of those things. And that's what I teach in the course, is answering those questions correctly the way that the producer wants to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the second thing that I really beg business owners to consider is why would you rent somebody's Rolodex? Why would you essentially pay them to make a whole bunch of contacts on your behalf? I exhort small business owners to really build their own media real estate, because then you have real relationships with an editor, a producer that you can literally pick up the phone. They will take your call. You don't have to write out a whole press release and make a big show of it. You can just literally say, hey, I have a story. I think you'd really love it, and you can get the exclusive on it. And they'll take your call, listen to you, and you'll be booked like that, because that's the power of a real relationship. And the more you play with journalists, especially at a junior level, where they're a freelancer maybe, or they're an intern somewhere, those are the people who are going to, the hungriest of them are going to rise up the ranks and take you with them. Over my career, I took so many of the people with whom I had relationships, and they sort of became my go-to people. So, there was one woman in catering. If I ever had to do a food-related story, she was the first person that I would call, always. So she got so much press. Yeah, go ahead.
At this point, what would you say is your unique value proposition? Because that's where we really plug it in at this chapter of the story cycle, and the call to adventure, this disruptive chapter, which makes our offerings more timely and relevant than anybody else. So Baby Got Booked, what is your value proposition?
I teach you how to take control of your story that makes everybody, from journalists and clients to partners and mentors, want more of you.
Beautiful. So that pushes us into the next chapter. And this is really when we start getting into Act 2. This is where the conflict starts coming up. So that all sounds well and good. But we always have doubts in our mind. Can I really pull this off? What does it cost? Do I have enough time and energy to do this? So we move into what I call villains, fog, and crevasses, the obstacles and antagonists that we all come across, not only in the stories we consume, but in our own lives. So this is when you do kind of a SWOT analysis, not only for yourself, but for your audiences. But to be real simple here, and since we have a time frame here, we have about 20 minutes left with you, and then I know you've got to go, which, by the way, every great story has to have urgency to it. So I just built some into this podcast.
Nice.
Quickly tell us, what do your customers need to overcome to do work with you and to be a part of Baby Got Booked?
The biggest mistake I see people make is having this misconception that media happens to other people who are thinner, more beautiful, more accomplished, who have better businesses, who have their lives a little bit more together than they do. Always. They're always like, oh yeah, but I'm not ready for the media. I'm not ready. And I'm like, really? Who do you think media happens to? And I'm asking this as somebody who has interviewed thousands of people just like you. Media happens to people who have good stories. Media happens to people who are passionate about what they do, who are innovative about what they do, who basically have something that they're offering and a way to say it that makes people say, oh, cool. I want to talk about this at dinner. I want to talk about this in the kitchen. I want to talk about this at the water fountain and share this because it makes me feel smart. So if you can educate, entertain, or inform me and somehow make my life better, you're ready for media.
That's fabulous. And so they overcome this. If they don't do it, what's at stake here, or their obstacles and antagonists, if they hold off, then they lose out on this opportunity of being in the media. If they take a deep breath and go for it, knowing that they have to embrace a lot of ambiguity in this process and have confidence in themselves and their platform that they're going to be able to deliver, then the whole world opens up for them. So it's kind of really overcoming that fear factor, I would imagine. And that takes us into chapter 6, the mentor. And in this case, you and Baby Got Booked are the mentor to your customers on their journey. So what happens within this mentorship? Because this will cover both chapter 6 and chapter 7, the road of trials. How do they get involved? How do they have their highs and lows with your platform and ultimately come out of the other end better because of it?
Right. So when they purchase my program and have access to my training, typically I will see people struggle with, oh my goodness, how much time is this? How much time do I need? Because if there's one thing that entrepreneurs have even less of than money, it's time. And I get it. I'm one of you, right? I also struggled with the same things. So the course is very short. It's less than 6 hours if you watched everything back to back. And what we've done is we've templatized a lot of it. So we have pitched templates where literally they're mostly written for you. You fill in the blanks with your message. And the other piece that people like, it's that insecurity piece that I mentioned before, to help people around it and to offer the mentorship that I think is crucial to success in life and in business. We have group coaching calls once a month, and we have a private Facebook group where people get constant 24-hour ongoing support, not just from me and my team, but also from each other. So there's a peer support place to go to celebrate a win. It's like there's sometimes a gap between when you receive news that you're going to be on TV, for example, and when you're actually on TV. And you may not, if it's your first time, you may not be comfortable sharing the news publicly until after the fact, because there's a small chance you might get canceled. So there's a place for you to go and celebrate the wins. There's a place for you to go and share an insecurity. There's a place for you to go and rant if you feel like you were covered in a way that wasn't exactly what you were hoping for. There's a place for you to go and say, I hated my hair on TV. It sucked. You don't want to do that on Facebook.
So you've literally built an online community for these folks to be able to connect into. And it does lead us into chapter 8. So we went from mentor through chapter 7, the road of trials, kind of what do they experience in this whole process, into chapter 8. And you've designed in little celebratory points, which are really, really critical. And a lot of businesses seem to, especially professional services firm businesses, seem to overlook these little points of celebration that shows people that they are progressing through their journey working with you, and in the process leveling them up, because I would imagine the more they work with you, the better they get, the bigger, the stronger, the faster they become. And what they initially wanted when they got involved is now no longer enough, which starts to sort of set up this ritualizing of your product and services. So can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of designing in these celebratory points? And this is in chapter 8, Victory is at Hand.
Well, I'm a huge believer in momentum. And in today's world, especially, I know you've heard this is such a cliche now. Everybody's all about instant gratification. I like working hard, and I encourage my people to work hard, but you have to be able to win quickly enough that it feels like your efforts were worth it, especially in a small business context. You have like approximately 17 million things on your to-do list at any given day.
Yep.
If you're going to put press as number one, that's better pay off pretty much immediately, which is why I help people sort of walk through. There are certain things that that I've designed where I'm just like, okay, you want a really quick win? Start here. Where do you start? So I've answered those questions. And the way that I did that, and this is something that everybody can take away, because it's certainly not unique to my own business, is I really practice what I preach. And one of the first things I teach people in module 1 is listen to your customers. What are they telling you is missing from the course? What are they telling you really works? What are they telling you they wish they had? What are they telling you where they're stuck? I listen super carefully. I have a constant file. It's an open note on my phone because it syncs across all my devices. So I have it with me no matter where in the world I am. And I'm always looking at, if I start to hear something over and over, I'm like, okay, here's an opportunity. I never see it as criticism. I always see it as an opportunity. And then I'm like, I'm going to tweak this. And that's going to give me the opportunity to send out an email to everybody who's paid me money to say, hey guys, you kept saying this. I listened. I built it. Go find it. It's in there. It's yours.
So you have designed into your program these mile markers that really show you can anticipate where someone's going to get that first exposure and give them then a podium to share that with the rest of your audiences, your customers, so that they can celebrate that quick win. And then I imagine you just kind of keep leveling them up through the process?
Yes, exactly. And what tends to happen is I'm not the only one doing it because they do it to each other. They encourage each other. They, when one person, lands their column in the Huffington Post, for example, everybody else who's done it in the past will be like, oh my God, I remember that feeling, that first welcome email. Hooray, good for you. And, or if somebody's been pitching and they aren't getting through, others will chime in to be like, hey, I tried this other contact. Maybe you should try her instead. And they'll share the email address. So there's a lot of that community spirit built in. It's not, I have to admit, it's not nearly as gamified as I would like it to be. And that's actually, interestingly, where we're taking it. So we have a whole new tech platform that we're exploring.
Hold
which is
that
what we've
thought
actually
for a minute. Hold that thought, because that's going to
okay.
come up in chapter 10, but this is great. So anyways, I think suffice it to say that you've got these leveled up celebratory points throughout the process, which is hugely important. Like you said, to capture that momentum, give them some early wins, and make sure that they recognize those early wins and keep building on those. Let's go to chapter 9. And this can be very implicit or explicit in your story, and it comes down to the moral of the story. Now, in this case, our story, your story, is about the mentor, which is you and Baby Got Booked, helping the heroes, which are companies large and small, getting the PR exposure that they want along this path. So in living this story with you and your customers, what is the basic value or values that you connect between what your entity is all about and what your customers want? What are those shared values?
I think we all want more. I launched my company as someone who, on paper, shouldn't have it made. I'm a woman, and we all know about the glass ceiling. I'm an immigrant. I have an accent. I'm brown. I'm coming off of mat leave, so I've been out of the game for 2 years, etc., etc. There's like fill in the blanks with whatever stereotype you'd like to use. And I just don't care. I don't buy that story. That's not a story I choose to live. So delete and rewrite. So I'm a huge believer in each of us holds a Sharpie, and there's writing on the wall. And, a lot of that writing has been put there by other people, and you have an eraser in one hand and a Sharpie in the other. So just get to work. And I think that I like to, I try to exemplify and lead by example the kind of story and the kind of action that I think everyone can live, where they, on a daily basis, set up their lives so that they get a chance to explore the best parts of themselves and bring those parts forward, because there's plenty of room at the top.
So really what you're saying is you've got a vehicle or a platform that on the left brain side, the operational side is for you, me, the customer, to get my story out in the world so more people know about it. But what it sounds like you're doing is really using this as a motivational platform to say, hey, let's get your story straight. Get a story that's important to you,
Yes.
clients, and something that you are going to write on your whiteboard and you are literally going to live into. And the sooner you start doing that, these other things start taking place. Your story becomes more interesting. The passion behind it is the fuel that drives it forward. And you start finding ways to really impact the lives of others with whatever offering it is that you are trying to communicate to the world using the Baby Got Booked services. So it's interesting. You're not saying I'm just giving you the power away from public relations firms. You are saying I'm giving you the power and the permission to write a news story or to amplify the cool story you're in, live into it, and make a greater impact in the world. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of people, when they first start with me, what they're really coming to me is how to tell a better story, how to pitch a better story. And what they actually get from me, if I'm doing my job correctly, is how to be a better story.
I love that. That's fantastic. That's your unique value proposition right there, if you ask me.
Agree.
Let's go to chapter 10. And that's what it comes back to, this new enterprise or this new extension of Baby Got Booked you got going. Chapter 10 is about to be continued, or creating brand rituals. Now, when I created the story cycle process, it came out of Joseph Campbell's 17-step hero's journey. Heroes in an ordinary world, they go to an extraordinary world because they want something. They're tested. They overcome those tests of character and strength and talent and all that. They level up in the process and they return home. End of story. They return back with the boon and they're great. in our lives and in our business world lives is it's not a one and done, that this revolution expands through the story cycle, our 10-step process. And so we have to pay very close attention to that chapter 10, to be continued, or creating brand rituals around it. How have you created rituals within the use of Baby Got Booked to help people level up and keep using the service? And what are some of the new offerings that you are coming out with to not only enhance the community you have, but of course to expand that community?
It's a great question. And it's so indicative of how much further I have come along this journey, because about a year ago, somebody asked me at a business conference, what's your ladder of ascension? Which is exactly what you're asking me now. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was like, what ladder? What do you like? It was just too much. I turned to them and I said, listen, you don't understand. I only know how to do one thing. All I know is how to help people tell a good story. Like, that's all I know. This is what I've done my whole life. I don't have anything more in me than this, other than this course. What ladder? And 2 months later, literally 2 months later, I was at a different conference and I was having a very, very different conversation. And here I was having a conversation with fellow professional speakers, and they were like, how the heck did you build a 6-figure business from zero in less than 6 months? Like, what the heck are you doing differently from what we are?
And
that was my ladder. And that's when it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, what I'm doing differently is I have the permission to play with people who want me to speak for a fee. And I have permission to play with people who want me to speak for free, because I'm very, very clear about my value and how people can buy from me. And I have different ways that people can buy from me. So pretty much everybody has a chance to play. And so then people were like, well, I need this model. I need to build this for myself. And that became sort of a higher end program that I do, which I call Baby Got a Back End. And then from there, so after building that for a few more months, right? 8 more months, we suddenly started having a conversation just a few weeks ago, like literally less than 6 weeks as of this recording, where I was like, there are a lot of people on our list and a lot of people that I meet on a daily basis who are still in that entrepreneur phase, or the startup phase, where they're like, I really want to have a business. I'm really scared about jumping. They're still mired in the fear and the doubt and all that good stuff. Or they've launched and they're struggling. And they're like, how do you see these shortcuts? Like, what do you do? What do you eat? Like, what is your ritual? And I was like, I would love to give you this. This is not a secret. I have stood on the shoulders of giants, and I would love to give you all of this in a way that does not cost a lot of money and that does not require a whole bunch of your time, because I know these are 2 huge pain points for you. So we created Baby Got Booked Lab, which is a membership site where people can come in and get mini courses. So courses that are less than 90 minutes long, usually less than 60 minutes long, and they're all modular. So it's like you unlock whichever course speaks to you, because everybody's business is different, and you can get the different pieces that you need to accelerate your both business and personal growth, because I believe those two are intrinsically linked.
So where can they find you online?
So you can find me, the best place to look for me is geetanadkarni.com. You could also go to babygotbookedlab.com or babygotbooked.com. They all sort of feed each other. There's also the Baby Got Booked podcast. So if you Google Baby Got Booked, basically, you'll find me.
And Geeta Nadkarni, GeetaNadkarni, is that right?
Exactly right.
.com. By the way, I know that you've got a youngin' at home and you're expecting your second one. So I figured that probably was the inspiration behind Baby Got a Back End. Because I imagine you're dealing with those back ends quite a bit.
Always. But I'm a huge believer that if you don't have a back end, you're just very restricted and very limited in which opportunities will make sense for you.
And by a back end, you mean?
And by a back end, I mean a way for people to work with you more deeply. So you will have what they call front end, which is sort of less expensive, less high ticket offerings where people don't have to get to know you that well. They don't, they can be a little bit, they can have just met you. They recognize that you have some value, and it's not too huge a risk to work with you to get to know you better. That's your front end. So that's the value that you give them off the front when they first meet you. And then as they get deeper into your process and they start becoming the better story, they start to see results and they're like, wow, I love this. I want more of this. Think about how you purchase from all the brands that you love, the ones that you're really loyal to. You don't just buy one thing from them and say, wow, that was great. Awesome. I'm done. It's usually you go back and you say, I wish they made more of, I wish they made this other thing. I wish they made this. I wish they made that. Or, you'll buy a pair of pants and be like, maybe I should get a top to go with it. That. So your front end is whatever they first buy from you, whatever the market seems to want most. And then your back end is what the next thing that makes sense on their evolution that you can monetize more deeply because now they trust you and are willing to learn more deeply and pay you more deeply for it. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And Geeta, I just want to thank you. I know we're at the top of the hour and we're running out of time with you. You have to move on to something else. Any last words of wisdom for our listeners before we sign off?
I just really think that the biggest shift you can make is to think about, is to give yourself permission to have more. To get really, really, really honest with yourself about what you really want. Not just, not a dollar amount, that can be part of it. If it's a fast car, that can be part of it. If it's a big house, that's all good. But really get a deep sense of what you want and why you want it. And give yourself permission to have it. And all the pieces that you need to lead you there will suggest yourself. The moment you're at peace with what you want, the tactics, the mentors, the courses, the whatever it is you need, the platforms, the partners, they all appear and you will be able to see them for what they are. Does that make sense? That's kind of woo, but it's true.
It's not woo. It's woo only from our business mind, but it's absolutely true. And I'm experiencing that myself as I continue to grow the Business of Story platform. And what it does is it exposes and introduces me to amazing people like yourself, Geeta. And I can't thank you enough for being on today's episode.
Oh, Park, it's been such a pleasure. You're so much fun to work with. Thank you.
And I want to remind everybody to go to Baby Got Booked, listen to the podcast from last week where it was wonderful because I was invited on. Geeta was going to interview me, but what actually we ended up doing is flip the tables, and she told us all about her backstory leading up to what you heard today, and it's a marvelous story. So I invite you to go and listen to that. That's like chapter 1 or the first book, and this is the sequel to that. So thank you all for listening to this edition of Business of Story. If you like what you're hearing, please go to iTunes, give us a check mark on the stars up there, give us a comment. If there's someone you would like on the show or like to learn more about something, please feel free to reach out to me at park@businessofstory.com. And tune in next week when we will have another stellar star like Geeta on Business of Story. Until then, have a wonderful life. Hey, if you like what you're hearing here on Business of Story, then you are going to love Definitive, the email from Convince and Convert that many marketers say is the most useful resource around. Each day, the team at Convince and Convert picks a topic and sends you the 3 best resources ever created about that topic. It's topical, it's timely, it's useful, so go to definitivedigest.com and subscribe for free right now. To tell effective business stories means to truly understand your audience, beckon them in with a story they care about, convert them into a customer, and then nurture that relationship for lifelong brand bonding. That's not always easy to do, but marketing automation has made it easier than ever. The challenge is, how do you take all that data and turn it into drama? Well, the marketing gods over at Oracle Marketing Cloud have done that for us. They've created this easy-to-read and easy-to-digest guide called Marketing Automation Simplified Guide. It offers an introduction to the 5 tenets of modern marketing and breaks down the tips marketers need to know to automate and optimize. This includes data in targeting, email marketing, lead nurturing, lead scoring, content marketing, and sales enablement. So to get your free Oracle Marketing Cloud Guide, Marketing Automation Simplified, go to bit.ly/Oracle Automation. That's bit.ly/Oracle Automation. And start getting your brand story straight. Hey, I've got a question for you. What's the best call to action button color on your website? Yeah, you probably didn't see that one coming, did you? Well, what's the best shape and sizes of your CTA buttons? And what copy gets more clicks? You know, these questions have interrupted my sleep patterns for weeks now, until I downloaded a helpful new email marketing guide from Emma called Why We Click: The Psychology Behind a Great Call to Action. You'll learn how applying just a little bit of brain science can transform your CTA buttons into small but mighty conversion powerhouses. It covers the button color, copy, and placement that helps skyrocket click rates. Check it out at myemma.com/click. You know, Emma helps marketers everywhere send smart, stylish email newsletters, promotions, and automated campaigns, and help us all rest a little easier knowing our email marketing is doing its job. So check out their new publication at myemma.com/click.
Thanks for tuning in to The Business of Story. Don't forget there are terrific free storytelling resources for you at thebusinessofstory.com, where you'll also find the complete show archive. The Business of Story is sponsored by Oracle Marketing Cloud, Emma, and by Convince and Convert, and is produced by Convince and Convert Media. Find more great shows like The Business of Story at marketingpodcasts.com, the first search engine for marketing podcasts. Podcast imaging by AudioBag.com.